And well, okay, good morning, how's it going? Ready for today's class? Let's say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Um, Give me a moment. Yes, I need to check this out. Okay, now, um, for today, you were required to write a little bit related to the theoretical framework. Have you written something related to the theoretical framework? Or do you want me to give you again a full review to the theoretical framework?
Teacher, is better the full review.
The full review? Okay, we're going to start with a
Like
full review.
like the main
Characteristics?
theoretical framework.
Very good. So we're going to do it.
Yeah, like
Okay, let's just start with full force today. Okay, okay, nice. I'm going to share my screen. There's a chat here. And chat says yes. Okay. Now, are you watching my window?
yes.
Okay, very good. I suppose everybody is watching to my window, to my screen, right? There's a chat here, and it says yes. Very good. Okay. Now we're going to this theoretical framework. We already saw this. We saw this. I think this is conceptual framework. We're going there. We're going to see right here this one. This one. This is the one that I was looking for. Okay. So let's start with this. Um, do you know what is the expression blueprint? Anybody? Do you know what the expression blueprint is?
Nope.
Okay, very good.
No.
So what is a blueprint? Let's see some examples right here what a blueprint is. This is a blueprint. Okay, this is the example. So it's going to be something like the key concepts on how to distribute a place, right? Like here, this sounds better. This one. So this is a blueprint, right? In which, for example, in architecture or in civil engineering,
Recording is on.
what? Well, anybody recording here? Yeah. Okay. Now, as I was telling you, there. So the blueprint right here is going to be just the structure, or it's going to be just the ideas on how to structure or construct something, right? So that is going to be the blueprint. I don't know if you have played video games like The Sims, for example, or any construction video games related to this part in which you're going to design something, right? So you're going to design, for example, a room, or you're going to design a full house, or you're going to design a flat, right? So that is going to be the way in which we're going to start working with this. Now that we have understood what a blueprint is, so it is going to be considered two little issues. Number one, the theories, and number two, the concepts, right? So when talking about the conceptual framework, we're going to talk about just the what? The definition, right? By taking into account what? Taking into account authors. And the other one is going to be the theoretical framework, in which we're going to use the theories, but guess what? By taking into account what I told you last class, the context. Okay? So if there's no context and you're going to talk about just the theory, that becomes a concept. But if you're going to talk about the theory and how this theory works at a specific context and in your context, that is going to be the theoretical framework. Okay? Now, what are theories? So the theories right here, they're going to, or they have been created or designed for explaining something, predicting, or master a phenomenon, right? For example, you're going to learn some little issues about anxiety. I come again with Sandra's and Junior's situation. Therefore, we're going to look for the theory related to anxiety, right? So, far beyond the definition, we're going to see how this is going to be related to the context, right? And it says over there, in many instances, were constructed models of reality. And how did you construct reality? By adding the what is this? The theory to a real situation. So therefore, to the context. And it says over there, a theory makes generalizations about observations and consists of an interrelated, coherent, and set of ideas and models, right? So this is going to be just a general issue on how something or a phenomena is going to be involved or developed, right? Of course, in all of the cases, the situations or the theory may vary. Okay? Are you following me?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay. So let's continue. Now, here it says, so the theoretical framework is going to be the analogous to the frame of the house. What is that? It's going to be just the foundations to support the house, right? So the basis, the structure, right? So in which you're going to provide a rationale for predictions. But what's the meaning for rationale? Do you know that word? Rationale?
Teacher,
Logical could be.
maybe
Very good. It's
logical
going to be
or
just,
something?
yes, of course, both of you are right. So it's going to be just the logical basis for a course of actions or beliefs. So the logical issue about this. So the theoretical framework is going to provide us a set of predictions or definitions in a logical way. Therefore, you're going to understand the phenomena. You're going to understand the variables among studies, right? So, for example, if there's a problem related to the acquisition of oral production, so the theory is going to say that. I'm going to take my words from the last class, in which I said, for example, this example, cancaneo. So that is going to be hesitation, right? When you start saying, for example, syllable by syllable, and I going to, so it's going to be like that. So there's going to be a support about that. There's going to be a support about that issue, about that problem, right? So what is going to be the way in which these problems are born, right? Which in which way these problems or yeah problems have been conceived. So therefore, we're going to look for the logical issue in this part, right? With the theory is going to give me all the logical basis, all the predictions, all that involves not only the theory but the problem. Get it? Now, I would like you to tell me, each and everybody of you, one by one, um, what is the theory that you're dealing and how this theory explains the logical basis of your problem. How can we include the context? How can we include the context? Okay, so the context example, we're going to talk about third semester students and the lack of oral production inside this student. So how can we include that? We're going to explain or give some evidences due to previous observations and or the experience provided by the authors, right? In this case, you. Okay, now, what are your theories?
Teacher,
Yes?
in our case, we are based on some difficulties that are lack of vocabulary, inhibition, and others.
Mhm.
So, can we include that information in the theoretical framework, or we have to start talking about the context that is the idea from culture course, or
Okay, so the problem
I
right
don't
here is going to be the lack of vocabulary, right? And the lack of oral
oh,
production skills, could be. I don't know.
speaking skill
Yeah,
proficiency.
but as you said, that's not the theory. Those are those difficulties.
Very
Those,
good. But from the difficulties, we need to look for the logical basis, right? And what is going to
what
be the
are
logical basis?
Mhm.
The way in which the theory is going to explain that, right? So, for example, lack of vocabulary in higher courses. So, we're going to look for that information, right? So, theories related to vocabulary acquisition or language acquisition, right? In this case, oral proficiency development or oral skills, uh, no, or oral acquisition, right? So in this case, we're going to use that. Sandra says, the context in the class is the classroom? Yes, of course. It's our classroom, right? Or it's going to be our degree. This is our context, right? Because we need to see three different types of contexts right here. Number one, the local, so Universidad de Pamplona, or in this case, which would be for the bachelor degree in foreign languages. The other part is going to be the whole university, but as we will see that it's going to be um, uh, got it. As this phenomena is not going to be conceived or is not going to be seen directly in some other courses around the university. So we're going to stay right here. Okay. Then we're going to the national part. So we're going to see, for example, if this phenomena is going to be repeated at Universidad Industrial de Santander, UIS. If we're going to see, for example, something happening at Universidad de Antioquia, or Universidad Nacional, or Universidad del Valle, Universidad de Popayán, Universidad de Cartagena, Uninorte, Uniatlántico, right? So we're going to say, for example, if there is further information about the national part, then we're going to look for international issues. But we're going to divide that into Latin American countries and the rest of the world, right? Because we need to see, for example, if these affectations are proper from Spanish native speakers or for everybody is the same when learning a foreign language, right? So we need to take into account those issues. You get me? Say yes, say no. Okay, a bit. Okay, let's continue with that bit. Okay, so what is going to be the context? Is going to be the way in which we're going to see that this problem is happening at a local area, in this case, the foreign languages program. Okay. Let's continue. Now, the theory right here are going to be generated by using inductive processes, right? So, right here, you're going to see something uh, that is going to be inductive, yes, and the other hand, that is going to be a deductive approach in which you're going to use directly. No, sorry. That is going to you're going to evaluate and modify existing theory by testing predictions about relationships between observed phenomena. What it is something like that the theory is going to induce you to the real problem, right? It's going to give you ideas, directions. It's going to give you instructions on how a problem or on how a situation, an existing situation is going to be developed, right? The theory says that, but you're going to use a deductive approach. Why? Because you need to see if this theory is going to be tied to the context that you're going to deal with. So, if this theory adjusts to the context, so you can decipher what is happening over there. But if the theory doesn't explain at all what is happening inside the context, I suggest you to use another theory. So far so good. What are we going to take into account for the theoretical framework? Number one, we're going to provide the context, right, for examining the problem. So the theoretical rationality, meaning the theoretical logical basis about this. So let's say third semester students, well, I'm using my own case, third semester students, they didn't have enough expertise or enough knowledge or enough developmental skills or developed skills for them to face B1 courses. Therefore, the problem right here was for them to improve their both oral production and interaction. That was my problem. So, how to improve the oral production and the oral interaction, right? Taking into account what? The low level of the spoken skills or the speaking skills inside the classroom. So that was my problem, and that was the way in which I conceived this, right? So I was providing my context by telling what? By telling the truth, the reality of what it was happening. Okay? Let's see if we have more. Now, now, for this, you're going to develop the hypothesis, or in this case, the questions and the objectives, right? When you have developed your questions, it's because you know which is going to be the horizon that you're going to see, that you're going to decipher, that you're going to include, right? So in that way, you're developing your research, your questions. Well, not hypotheses. We don't work with hypotheses, right? Now, then you're going to see a frame of reference or a reference. But what is going to be your reference? You're going to use observations. You're going to define the concepts. You're going to set some research designs, right? So by telling what? By using the theories, because in the theories there's going to be a research design that is going to be qualitative or is going to be quantitative, that is going to be a case study, is going to be an action research, it's going to be a phenomenology, it's going to be a ground of theory, whatever, right? But it's included in all of those studies. So based on those studies, you're going to see in which way this theory was implemented for them to have a conclusion, some results, right? You need to interpret everything, right? So the more you read, the better interpretation you're going to have. After that, you're going to have generalizations about the theory plus the problem, right? Why? Because it's going to serve you as a guide to systematically identify logical, precisely defined relationships among variables. Which are going to be your variables? The theories you have defined, and also the relationship that they're going to have with the problem. Now, if the problem is going to be lack of vocabulary at higher courses and low level order production skills or development, so right there you're going to tie or you're going to link the theory with the real problem that they're going to analyze, meaning your problem, your research questions. Okay, let's continue. So, in which way can we use this theoretical framework as a guide in research study? Okay, so we're going to take into account right here that the theories as I told you before, they're going to be created or are going to be constructed in your theoretical framework in order to explain, predict, and master the phenomena, what I told you before, right? But you here, you're going to construct models of reality, of your reality, the reality you're going to work with, right? In order to do what? To make generalizations about your observations, right? So, which are going to be, or in this way, you're going to create a set of coherent ideas and models. What are going to be those models? Well, the relationship that you're going to make with or between what you have observed and what the theory explains. Okay. In this case, when using this theoretical framework, you're going to have a support, right, for you to understand what is happening, and a support for, after understanding what is happening, to explain that. Okay? So here, as it's stated here, the theory is designed to explain a particular behavior in infants, as an example, may not be appropriate for the study of those behaviors in adults. Example. So if you have found information about, for example, the way, or sorry, problems with written production, but you're focused on oral production. Therefore, it is inappropriate, right? But in the end, it is production. No, but oral production is different and written production is different too. So if I'm talking about, example, anxiety, and I'm going to talk about anxiety just because, I don't know, emotional issues. Is there a relationship between emotional issues and the foreign language acquisition or foreign language anxiety? Yes, no. So we have to read further and we have to state if there is a relationship about the problem and what is going to be done. Analyzed, sorry. Now, how to formulate the theoretical framework? Okay, so the purpose right here is for you to see clearly the variables on the study, as I told you before, which are going to be your variables. I showed you in my thesis which my variables were, right? So I was talking about oral production, oral interaction, oral communication, and the issues related to virtual learning environments and pedagogical mediations and virtuality. So those were the what? The theories that I used in order to give a clear idea on what I was going to explain, right? So based on that, I was trying to look if via Edmodo uh, and via YouTube, there was a possibility to help students improving their what their oral and interaction, their oral production and oral interaction in an autonomous way. And also I was looking for autonomous learning, right? And also I was looking for connectivism. Therefore, I explained all my variables by taking into account the context, right? So here, this is going to give you a general framework for data analysis. So in the chapter number 4, you're going to work with data analysis, but you're going to use all the data that you have, that you're going to collect, and you're going to tie it with the theory. So does the theory validate what you have gathered? If so you're going to use it in order to fortify what you have found. If not, you're going to say if there's going to be a contradiction, or in the end you have found something new. And here we're going to say that this theoretical framework is going to be useful also for using descriptive and experimental methods. In this case, it's going to be descriptive. You're not experimenting. You're going to describe the reality. That was the theoretical framework. Have you understood what theoretical framework is?
Teacher, I
Yes?
have a question.
Question.
Mhm. Um, can we say that theoretical framework has a like a real structure, like first of all context, then um, like another aspect, or like an organized structure?
Oh, yes. Yes. We're going to start with what? With what the author says, right? So we're going to
Okay.
state, for example, what the author states and, if possible, the context in which it was developed, right?
Teacher, but we weren't supposed to begin with the with I mean like doing uh, a paragraph what so like with a conceptualize of the problem without just explaining the issue and that kind of and separating the what the difficulties and that kind of stuff, but later on I mean the earliest first part is just the what just the like the concepts but uh, summarized or something like that. I forgot that
No,
part.
yes, yes. What you're saying is right. What you're saying is right. But we have to expand all of that idea, all of those ideas, sorry. How? So, number one, what they're going to do is going to talk about the general issues about the concept, the theory itself. So, here, I'm going to use what Sandra says and I'm going to try to tie all this up. Sandra says, teacher, when we talk about emotional issues, we are including psychology. I was thinking about that. We have to talk about anxiety from the point of view of psychology and other fields, not only from the educational field, right? Okay, so if you're going to explain, so let's use Sandra's example in order to set right here the theoretical framework. Now, we're talking about emotional issues, right? Related to the foreign language anxiety. Number one, we have to look if inside the issue related to foreign languages anxiety, there is going to be a referent about emotional issues, right? So if this is going to be just related to the psychological field, we need to look for issues related to the educational field, right? Why? Because we're going to analyze this at a 100% psychological level, right? We're going to understand how or in which way this foreign language anxiety is affecting the oral production or the oral the spoken acquisition, right? So that's the way in which we're going to use the theory. So far, so good. What I'm saying is that you're going to use your theory and you're going to try to adapt the theory to the context and the problem you're dealing with, right? Therefore, you're going to use your theory in order to make understandable the problem. Got it?
Teacher, so maybe we have to relate to have a relationship between the other field, maybe the psychology, only with the educational field.
Very good. Yes, of course. So we can make a relationship between uh, the psychological field with the educational one. That's okay. That's good. If you find that relationship, that is going to be useful inside the project. Got it? Any other question?
No.
People.
For example, we can say that if we have something about this in psychology, psychology said that anxiety affects um, students in that way. So in the educational, so for example, in a classroom, students can experiment some emotions, something like that.
Some drawbacks. Okay, yes. Absolutely, yes, because you're explaining now from the psychological field how this is affecting the educational field. Bingo! That's it. Very good, Sandra.
Okay.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Nobody else? I'm going to continue with the explanation of the conceptual framework. Okay, I know that the other teachers are not dealing with the conceptual framework, but taking into account what I saw in my master degree, I think it's important to talk about the conceptual framework, right? So, what is going to be the conceptual framework? So, the conceptual framework is going to be right here, right? Is to outline possible courses of actions or to present a preferred approach to an idea or thought. So far, so good. We're talking about the definition, but taking into account the point of view that is going to be useful for us, right? Now, how to develop the theoretical framework or the conceptual framework. So, in order to talk about the conceptual framework, we're going to take into account that the definition of concept is an imaginary or symbolic representation of an abstract idea, right? Example, the what the definition related to anxiety, the definition related to lexicon, the definition related to oral production, the definition related to oral interaction, right? So the definition. Now, when we're making, we're going to identify the relationships among the concepts, right? So we're going to put in a logical order those definitions. How to formulate these definitions, right? Well, so we're going to use the theory and we're going to extract all the ideas or all the concepts from the theory, right? Therefore, we're going to take into account two issues. Number one, the conceptual definition, meaning, well, the general meaning about that. And this is going to be just inside the conceptual framework. But the operational definition, meaning is going to be how this definition is going to work. So this is the theory, the part related to the theory. So the operational part is going to be related to the theoretical framework. The conceptual part is going to, or the definition is going to be just related to the uh, the conceptual framework. Okay. Now, another idea in order to guys turn your mics off, please. Too much noise. Thank you. Okay, now another issue right here is going to be just the way in which we're going to formulate the logical issue or the logical part when formulating these theories. I would like you to read this uh, 9 lines related to formulating the theoretical rationale. And take 2 minutes for you to read this. And after that, we're going to continue, right? Okay, time's enough. So, by implementing, or sorry, by reading all the literature available about this, you're going to see or you're going to identify the theoretical connection between variables. Here, I'm not talking about the literature review. When we're talking about the literature review, is because or is related to all of those studies and books that you have been reading lately, right? So that is going to be the literature, and from that literature, you're going to identify which are going to be related to the studies, which are going to be related to your research object, and those studies that are going to be related to the research topic. Those related to the research topic or related to your research question are going to be used as the theoretical part, right? But how to evaluate this, right? So we're going to evaluate this by taking into account the importance and the importance of these studies and how these studies are trying to decipher the phenomena or in which way you understand the phenomena by using the theory, right? So in this case, it doesn't matter if it's going to be just inductive or deductive. This needs to be written in a very logical way for the reader to understand what is happening here. Okay? Let's see right here some kind of the way in which these theories are going to work. So, number one, the theories can describe a particular phenomenon, or they're going to explain the relationship between or among phenomena, or they're going to predict how this phenomenon affect other fields. Example, in the case of Sandra, how the psychological issue affects the educational issue, therefore prediction. But if there is going to be a well described way in which the psychological issue affects the educational part, And it said something like, first, this happens in this way, then it happens in this way, and then blah, 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 blah. That is going to be just the description, right? Or also the explanation right here, but we're going to see it later on. Do we have more questions? No. Okay. Let's see right here what the descriptive theory is. So, we're going to see that there's going to be a description or classification in a specific dimensions, right? We're going to characterize individuals, groups, situations, right? Or you're going to summarize all of what you have seen in a discrete part, right? And that's it. Now, when you're going to explain the theory or the explanatory theory, right? So you're going to specify the relationship between or among the dimensions of characteristics of individuals, groups, situations, or events, right? So if you're going to describe, you're going to classify, right? So first, this happens in this way. Then this happens in this way. Then this happens in this other way. But when you're going to describe that or explain, it is going to be looking for the relationship between the variables. So, for example, if at the psychological issue this happens, and at the what? And at the educational issue this and this happens, therefore, at the foreign languages anxiety issue, there must be expected this, and that. So you're explaining the whole thing. So you're doing correlations. And then the predictive part, we're not working with predictions, right? So it is going to be a precise relationship between the dimensions or the characteristics of a phenomenon or differences between groups, right? As you're not experimenting, or maybe no, here we're not working with experimental case studies or quasi-experimental case studies, right? So we're not going to make a big inference on this. Okay, no, this is not important. Last semester, if I'm not wrong, you were working on something related to critiques, right? My question is, what do you remember a critique is? Are you there, people? Have you fallen asleep? People.
Teacher, teacher maybe analyze a topic and then give like an opinion.
Okay, could be. What else? Sorry for saying this in a direct way, guys, but there are like 5 people right here, and I would like you to have a what? More comments. Okay. Sandra says, an opinion about something. Oh, yes and no. What else? Who gives more? Ricardo, Angelica, Alex. Nobody.
Teacher,
Yes.
here I found that can be like judging like a topic or or a work.
Very good. That's it. That's a critique. So, what are we going to take into account for critiquing, not criticizing, critiquing a theoretical framework? So, number one, is the theoretical framework clearly identified? So, is the theory clearly identified inside the studies you're reading? If yes, work with that. If not, keep on working. Number two, is the theoretical framework consistent with what is being studied? Example, if we're working with lack of vocabulary or oral production or oral no, speaking skills drawbacks, and you have found information about writing production drawbacks, is that useful on what you're working, on what you want to answer? So if not, keep on working, keep on reading. Now, a double question here. Are the concepts clearly and operationally defined? Remember about the definition and the way it operates, sorry. Do they reflect the area of investigation? So, is that educational field? Is that psychological? Is that economy? Is that related to neurological issues? What? Number four, was sufficient literature reviewed to support the proposed relationships? So here, I don't want you to say something like, okay, in the theoretical framework, we're going to use just four authors and that's it. No, that is not enough. You need to read more. At least you need to cite 10 people talking about the theories, right? So if we're working with if we are working with two main theories, so five for one of the theories and the other five for the second set of theories. Then, is the theoretical basis for hypothesis formulation clearly articulated? Is it logical? So, is there a logical relationship between your research questions and the theory? Do you feel that this has been that the problem has been described, defined, explained with the theory at a logical way? So if that works, that there's going to be a consistency related to the theoretical framework. Another question, are the relationships among propositions clearly defined? So what is proposed in your project and what is proposed in someone else's study are creating a kind of relationship? If yes, create your own interaction between the theory and your context, meaning that the theory is going to explain the problem that you have found in your context. Number seven, if the theory is borrowed from a discipline other than nursing, are the data related specifically to nursing? Well, we're going to jump that part. Now, if we're going to read the other studies, they're going to be just instruments, right, to measure variables. So, are these instruments explaining the whole situation with the theory, right? So, for example, if they have implemented, sorry, an interview, is the interview related to the theory? And then, and this is very important, are the study findings related to the theoretical rationale? So, the findings and the way the authors are covering the findings, uh, are they supporting these findings? Sorry, are these findings supported by the theory? Meaning that is the author or are the authors using these theories in order to give a clear perception related to the findings and how this could be, well, what should be redundant, described or explained. Let's see some examples. This one. Now, we're going to see right here. Um, is there anything? Yeah. For example, let's see right here some issues regarding to the national goals for serving deaf and hard of hearing students in post-secondary training programs. So the problem right here is how to help these deaf and hard of hearing students inside the post-secondary training programs. Now, which could be the problems right here, the outcomes? Number one, the employment. Number two, the independence. Number three, enrollment. Number four, retention. Number five, graduation. And finally, final transition and job preparedness. What we have to take into account right here are going to be three different factors that are going to contribute to this phenomenon. Number one, access service studies. Number two, learning and living environment. And number three, the population studies, right? So for the access service, we need to take into account characteristics of service needs related to quality, reliability, availability, and trends. For the learning and living environment, we have to take into account resources, funding, attitudes, social support, and learning style. And for the population studies, we need to take into account characteristics related to deaf and hard of hearing, underserved, the transition of age, and secondary disabilities. So right here, you're watching which are the problems. And also we need to look the information in order to justify all of these problems, to explain all of these problems, to see that if these problems are happening or are seen at a context. So, what are we going to take into account right here? So, the candidates for these learning outcomes, they need to take into account three different factors. Number one, the principles of learning that we have said that, right? Then, the culturally relevant pedagogy. What are we going to take into account in order to teach this student with that hearing disability? And finally, we have to create a powerful teaching research and serving outcomes. So, what are going to be our contributions to this field? And that's all. Okay, guys. So, make an analysis in depth. Bravo! Yes, that's it. Very good. So, that's it. An in-depth analysis of your theory. Got it? Questions?
Recording has stopped.
Hey, teacher.
Yes?
Okay, sorry. I had the microphone disconnected and I've been talking. Sorry.
Okay.
What's the meaning of outcomes? I didn't get that part when you
Outcomes
were
are going
talking.
to be just those ideas. Outcomes are going to be just those ideas or those issues related to, forgot. Outcome. Okay. Ah, the consequences, right? So those are going to be the outcomes. So what is going out? The result of these issues. Okay. So what you're expecting to happen. So those are going to be the outcomes. The results. Got it?
Okay.
So, anything else?
Teacher, are you going to share those slides,
Yes,
please?
yes, and the recording too. I'm using the recording, but the rendering process takes like forever. So as soon as I have it, so I'm going to upload it, I think during the weekend. Angelica says, so the most relevant aspects are the context, the theories, and the concepts of our problems. Yes. In the theoretical framework, yes. So we're going to take into account our context. We're going to take into account the theory and the concepts, right? So the concepts are going to be just the definition, and the theory is going to be just the way in which these definitions are going to operate in order to justify or to give a clear answer to what is happening, to the phenomenon. Anybody else?
Teacher, can you repeat context, theory, and the last one? That was
Context, theory, and concept.
okay.
So remember, definition is going to be the conceptual framework, and operational part is going to be the theoretical background, the theoretical framework.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Teacher,
Yes.
and I have a question related to the this part in review of literature
Mm-hmm.
because I read a paper in which the review of literature have had been divided into two variables. I think so because
Mm-hmm.
here we have language learning strategies
Mm-hmm.
and studies on language learning strategies.
Okay.
But in each paragraph, we can find a short definition about these two variables,
Mm-hmm.
and then the author started talking about the well, he used some research related to this problem, but I think it looks like theoretical framework because you said the last class that we have to give a short definition about what we are investigating,
Mm-hmm.
and oh my god, oh, I done this down. Well, the well, what I try to say here is that for me it looks like equal.
Once again.
Well, what I try to say here is that for me, these two parts looks equal because in the we have a short definition of something, a short definition of these variables, and then the author used some research related to this to their or his problem.
Okay. Good. So here, what is going to be the definition? The definition is going to be, for example, what does it mean oral production? So based on the Common European Framework of References, the oral production is going to be related to the sector of activities related to this related to on how the user is going to prepare a material and then he's going to reproduce it, right? So that is going to be called oral production. So you get knowledge about something and then you're going to produce your discourse. It doesn't matter, yeah, your discourse. Oral interaction, on the other hand, is going to be based on the of the Common European Framework of References. Is going to be defined as the way in which people are going to have an interaction without any kind of preparation. Therefore, here there's going to be a spontaneous production or a spontaneous interaction among two or more people. That is going to be the definition, right? So here we're not explaining any kind of phenomenon. Now, when we see, for example, the way in which this concept is going to be developed in order to specify something, here it becomes the theory. Example. And here I'm going to answer the question related to Angelica. What's the difference between theory and concepts? Concept is going to be just the mere definition. But the theory goes far beyond that. Example, it is going to state, or it's going to say, for example, what? Got it. So, by taking into account the way in which oral production is going to be developed, we have to take into account, it must be taken into account all the stages defined by Brown 2001 and let's say Krashen, I'm not pretty sure about that, Krashen, related to the natural approaches, in which the oil production is going to be related to number one, this stage, number two, this stage, number three, this stage, and number four, this stage. By considering the way in which Latin American students are acquiring English as a foreign language, so we're using a context, and now we have defined a theory, right? So here, the definition itself that it says, for example, this means this, is going to be just the conceptual framework. But the theory is going to be the one that is going to give me, number one, a brief definition. Number two, the specifications related to it. Number three, the way in which it is going to be working inside the context. Number four, the context related to something else, right? Related to something else, no, related to the field, the research field. And number five, you're going to add over there the what your context in order to explain what is happening inside your reality, and that's the difference. So the theoretical framework is going to be the biggest part, and the conceptual framework is going to be just the definition, and that's it. By using, of course, authors, not dictionaries, authors.
Teacher, but in the theoretical framework, um, sorry, the conceptual framework goes inside the theoretical or is another part of the
Now we're
theoretical?
going to we're going to work with that in this way. Number one, we're going to use the theoretical framework, then the conceptual framework, and then the literature review. So first, the theory itself. Then we're going to use the concepts, and then we're going to use the studies that support our own study. Angelica says, so
Okay,
in
three
my case,
parts.
I've I have low level of oral production and lack of autonomous work. I have to look for two theories about that. Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So you have to look for oral production, oral production in the end. So oral production development could be, and maybe some other articles related to oral production, low level of oral production, right? How this can be measured, right? And the other one is going to be just related to autonomous work. So, number one, what is the meaning for autonomous learning, right? Because autonomy is going to be a slight concept, but autonomous learning is going to be something bigger, and how the autonomous learning is going to be developed. And in the field of foreign languages, how does this work, right? So that is going to be your theory. It doesn't matter if I already did it in the definition and the introduction. Well, that's the most important issue. You have defined that into the what? The introduction. Yes, but you define that in a short term. Now, in the theoretical framework, you're going to explain step by step all the issues related to, let's say, autonomous work, autonomous learning, and oral production development, right? So here you're going to use authors, you're going to talk about definitions, you're going to talk about, well, definitions related to the steps, right? You're going to define the steps, you're going to define the problems that it conveys, Okay. More questions? No questions? Everything is clear? Homework. You're going to create your theoretical background. I'm going to create a space on it model for you to start writing about the theoretical framework. Okay? And that's it. Start working on that. And well, these are the last 15 minutes about the class.
Very
And well,
cool.
any other question?
Teacher,
Yes? Start reading about literature
what
review for next week.
what you said, Sulina, it was the theory in itself, the context, and the authors.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. But in the definition, the conceptual framework, uh, here, yes, I'm going to work on the feedback as soon as possible. Okay. Okay. Yes, we're going to work on the theoretical framework, but we need to work also on the literature review. But well, first things first. Let's work with the theoretical framework, okay? But start reading about literature review. Yes. Yes. Well, we're going to finish that. And well, I will say the conceptual part is going to be just the definition. You're going to use an author in order to support the definition, and that's all. It is not going to be, for example, let's say in Spanish, what's the meaning for pastoreo? So you're going to an encyclopedia, it's going to say pastoreo, acción y efecto de pastorear. No, I don't want that. I don't want that kind of definition. I want a very full definition, a very explicit definition about that concept, right? So, for example, what is foreign language anxiety? Based on, let's say, any author, so you're going to do a summary about that. The foreign language anxiety is defined as the fact of, I don't know, I'm going to invent something, of feeling some kind of negative emotions while trying to produce something. So while trying to produce an oral, no, sorry, while trying to produce utterances. Uh, and that's it, right? Based on this author, it is stated that, and then we're going to define it over there. Let's say no more than 10 lines. That's going to be extremely big. Or maybe 5 lines, and that is going to be your definition, right? Not a definition taken from other author, meaning copy and paste. No, you're going to create your own definition based on what you have read, right? Therefore, you're going to create your own sets of definitions and you're going to create your theories.
But if we have another definition inside this paper,
You're going to recreate that with your own words, right? You're going to cite the author, you're going to give the importance to the author, but you're not going to copy and paste. You're not going to say something like I don't know, anyone, then the year stated that, and then you're going to copy and paste. That is plagiarism, and we're not working with plagiarism, right? So no. So you're going to recreate, and you're going to try to what? To synthesize while you have read. Got it? And then you're going to write your own perception about that definition. So, meaning that you're going to reconstruct what you have read in order to summarize that and to give your own concept. So, yes, you're going to create a micro dictionary here. Got it?
Teacher,
Yes?
so in the theoretical framework, we include the context, um, the theory like in 10 authors, then the conceptual framework in our own words.
Very good. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. Everything clear? Okay.
I think yes, and,
Let's say yes at
and
this first step. Okay? Yes, because we need to,
yes.
guys, I needed to read the information inside the books of Creswell and Christensen and Burke Johnson. I told you last class. I don't know if you have read those chapters, right? For the concepts, we have to reference. Yes, of course. We have to make your own references. So, for example, in my case, I referenced the Common European Framework of References. I cited Brown, for example, when I was using the concept of connectivism, I had to cite Simmons and Downes. So yes, you have to use your authors, the ones that have created the idea. So for example, if you're going to work with natural approach or the natural approach, it was created by yesterday's author, Krashen. So you have to state Krashen. Therefore, you're going to use the the one who has worked with the theory, and you're going to use that author for you to create your definition. So you're going to give credit to the author. Okay? Yes, you're going to use your own words, but taking into consideration what the author has stated. Okay? Referentiate. Yes. Okay, guys. So are we done? Clear?
Yes, teacher, if we have doubts, I think like, then
Text me.
uh,
You're going to text me. Yes.
yes.
Google. So yes. If not,
Google?
now you're going to text me that I was using right here. Google. I was looking for in-depth analysis. Okay, because
Okay,
I
teacher,
thought I
but
was going to
to
use something related to in-depth analysis, but no, in the end, no. And that's it, guys.
teacher,
Yes.
don't
Teach,
forget the slides,
What?
please.
Ah, yes. I'm going to send the slides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So, anybody else? Anything else? Nope. Okay, guys. So, thanks for coming, and I think no, nobody has classes with me at 5 p.m. Okay, guys. See you later, alligator, and bye bye.